You're listening to the North American Soccer Network, online at nasn.tv.
This is John Strong. You're listening to Soccer Made in Portland.
Welcome Timbers owner and president, Merritt Paulson.
This might take away your Merritt Paulson tweets segment.
No, we already did the Merritt Paulson Twitter update just to make sure we got it in. Garth Lagerwey, Real Salt Lake general manager.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate having me on.
An interview that we did with Kenny Cooper.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for the kind words.
Jim Rylett, he is the Timbers U23 coach.
For whatever reason, you have Kelly there because he's really not very good at what he does.
Opinions, yes. Factual information, that remains to be seen.
That's never stopped us before.
Good Tuesday morning, everybody, and welcome back to Soccer Made in Portland. We are out of elevators. We are into the offseason and ready to kind of talk about things from maybe a more macro point of view than we've been doing without week-by-week changes necessarily to talk about. This is Mao speaking, of course. Kelly McLean is here as well. And Kelly, how are you doing this morning?
Quite well. I'm doing the no-shave November kind of thing. Any excuse not to shave is always a good thing. And Aerosmith's new album is out. I'm a big Aerosmith fan, so I've been listening to that all morning.
It may look like I'm doing the no shave earlier this morning, and it's just I can't really help it. I have not been listening to Aerosmith though, apart from when you've been playing it through here. Okay, so what is this? This is Soccer Made in Portland, the NASN.TV. It seems like we've been away for a long time, and it's only been a week. But you may not have actually heard from us until the weekend because Trevor was stuck in an elevator and then without power, and I'm sure myriad other maladies over the past week in the New York area. We're happy that Trevor is back and was in the elevator with people he knew and wasn't too terribly uncomfortable of a situation there. However, it did mean that our show from last Tuesday didn't come out till the weekend, so you may not have heard it. It didn't come out anywhere close to find it. So if you want to listen to what we had to say about the last game of the season, go ahead and check that out. You can go to nasn.tv and, of course, find the iTunes and RSS feeds there. And if you subscribe to those, then you would have just gotten it as soon as it was available. The same will be true of this show. Also, of course, nasnradio.com, which you can listen in on TuneIn or Stitcher, and we're happy to say hello to everybody listening through that way. And then this show will be replayed later in the week on there if you want to catch it in that way. So lots of ways to find out what we had to say about the Timbers 1-1 draw in their last game of the season against San Jose. Playoffs are started now with everybody else. And we've got a couple of things that we want to kind of talk around regarding the playoffs a little bit. Guys who may or may not have formerly been involved with Portland. We've got some movement already on the Timbers roster. There's some other ideas. So I don't know. Where do you want to start?
I want to start with Trevor in the elevator because he was supposedly in there for close to 24 hours and tells us this morning that they didn't go to the bathroom at all while they were in there, which I find hard to believe. I think the three of them made a pact to not tell anyone that they had to defecate and urinate in the box. They just didn't want to have to tell people that and deal with those types of questions. So I'm going conspiracy theory that when Trevor says that they actually did not go to the bathroom at any point in almost a 24-hour time period, I don't know. I think they're just covering up, just trying to get away from having to give away any of the excruciatingly painful details that probably happened. So that's what I'm going.
As Trevor says, what happens in the elevator stays in the elevator. I think that's probably a fair way to to leave that one. It's been interesting, I'm sure, for everybody in the New York area. And we said last week, and we repeat it, we hope that everybody, we know we've got listeners everybody's able to tune in and got power back and things are returning a little bit to normal, if possible. So Trevor's back, show's back. That means we've got to kind of, I don't know, let's look back for a second, because playoffs started, as I mentioned. Houston has played twice now. Houston has scored 4 goals in the playoffs. Bruin, and the other one by Adam Moffat. There may be some things that you don't know that these guys have currently being teammates. Adam Moffat, obviously former Timbers player. We know that. We saw him score that outrageous goal last year, which made me bang my fist on a table in a public place. In that game in Houston, 2011, saw him score another crazy one. I think it was against the Galaxy last year, maybe. Another just unbelievably outrageous goal. Well, Adam Moffat was up to it again. Not quite as intense. Well, actually, a little bit more difficult, because it was sort of across the goal as opposed to just kind of shooting in a completely straight line. But scored against Kansas City the other day. And so he actually has a little bit of a connection with Will Bruin, which Kelly's going to give you because my audio is terrible.
So yeah, the Will Bruin, he was the what pick? 11th?
11th,
in last year's draft? 11th, and they got that pick through the whole Kris Boyd deal. So Houston, as we all know, they were courting Kris Boyd, so they had his discovery rights. He decides he doesn't want to go to Houston. Portland expresses interest, so now they have to get the rights from Houston, so they've got to trade something, so they give up that pick, and then Houston goes and uses it on Will Bruin. So, I mean, an interesting connection there that Houston has a couple of guys who are huge contributors, and even Moffat last year was a big contributor to them, all coming, through Portland. So I know that's, some fans are obviously, pointing that out and highlighting that as reasons for, more hate towards Gavin Wilkinson and whatnot. But, there was some conversations going on, particularly around Moffat on Twitter. And I mean, I just had to point out that, at the time that was a good deal for Portland. Moffat was not playing for Portland. He'd been injured a couple of times early in the season. It took him a really long time to come back. I think he had a family issue. I think there may have been perhaps a death in the family of sorts that he took time off a little bit from. And I mean, he really wasn't a factor for the Timbers. Plus, you consider that Jewsbury and sort of Diego Chara are sort of similar players playing similar positions. And they traded him and got 2 players that they had a need for at outside back. Well, that they still have, in some respects, they still have a need for. But that really helped them in the second half of the season. So, I mean, it's easy to look now at a couple of players and say, how horrible this turned out and, what bad moves they were. But I mean, that's the risk you take with all moves. You can look at other moves, for example, getting Alexander for Jeremy Hall. I mean, that was a steal as well, on the Timbers end. So, I mean, you can look at things any number of ways, but it is interesting to note that, there's 2 guys who are performing quite admirably in the playoffs for Houston. Guys basically directly coming from Portland.
Yeah, and that actually dovetails a little bit into this news that we have about Kosuke Kimura. Another guy, obviously, arrived via trade, I think in July, like a couple days before Spencer got fired. It was the last thing Spencer did, basically. And he obviously played, the whole second half of the season. I think the only game he didn't start after he arrived was the game in Seattle when Lavelle Palmer replaced him, much to the consternation of everyone, basically. So he's now on trial at Wisla Krakow in Poland. And, it's interesting. When these trades are made, we don't know anything about the details of contracts. I mean, that's true in general. We don't know usually lengths. I mean, we get some information a couple times throughout each season from the union. He didn't start against San Jose either. Okay. We get some information from the players union about kind of guaranteed compensation, and then some other numbers that sort of revolve around salary. But for the most part, we don't necessarily know, unless the news comes out in sort of another way, how long guys' contracts are. So, the sort of, I don't know if it's just being naive or what, but I think the general feeling I get when one of these trades is made is that I think most people, and myself included, just kind of assume, well, this guy's going to be with the team, a while. That there's he's on the team, he's part of the team. I don't automatically think, well, this guy's contract is up at the end of the season. But that's true of some players, and we don't yet know who. So this is an interesting peek into sort of the value of trades, and you mentioned sort of the value of trading Adam Moffat. I mean, people went crazy last year, again, myself included, when Moffat started scoring all these goals, and particularly in the way in which he did it, and sort of the frustration that came with having Mike Chabala and Lavelle Palmer at times, and feeling like that was an unfair trade. The Timbers didn't know what they were talking about. But there has to be a little bit of space and time to sort of reflect on all of the details of a trade. And I'm not trying to make a judgment on the Moffat trade. What I'm trying to say is that in retrospect, Kosuke Kimura was not great. He wasn't the worst player on the team every game. It kind of filled a need to some degree, plugged a gap on some level, moved Jack Jewsbury back into central midfield. As it turns out, he basically was on the same deal as Ian Hogg. They could play him, they could watch him. If they liked him, they could keep him. And if not, there was absolutely no obligation beyond that game against San Jose. So it seems like, with this little bit of additional information that we haven't had all season, or since he arrived, that it's actually not that bad of a trade, because they had to play somebody. We talked endlessly about how the second half of this season kind of didn't matter as far as results go. And so, this is kind of, every time Gavin Wilkinson says we're evaluating these players, I mean, everybody hates that, but, you got a guy whose contract is up at the end of the year. You need to know whether or not you want to keep him. And if you want to keep him, you have to see something that's worth keeping. And in a lot of ways, and not just in this area, but knowing what you don't want is just as important as knowing what you want. So I think it's really interesting to see Kimura gone already. I mean, a week later, basically, not even a week, and he's already in Krakow training. And that means there's no way he's coming back to the Timbers. And I think that means they used his time wisely to determine, okay, he's also not the answer we need at right back. He could have been. He's not. So now there's the whole offseason to try and find someone.
Yeah, and we know that he was kind of a Spencer guy as well. I mean, at the time they signed him, they had said that they'd inquired about getting him, I think, in the last offseason, when they were looking at addressing their right back issues this time last year. They had gone to Colorado to ask about him, and it wasn't going to work out. But they, I think the quote was something like, well, if you ever change your mind, let us know, or something. And, that came about. And obviously he was that type of player that Spencer liked and wanted to have as that defensive outside defender to come forward, to serve balls in. And, I think a lot of people would agree that, Kimura did that pretty well from time to time when he did get his opportunities and take them. Even in the second half of the season, towards the end, when that maybe wasn't a focus for the outside backs, trying to get forward all the time and get service in, he was still doing that quite a bit. Obviously, I think most of the time he probably was a liability defensively. But, you can't really question his effort that he played with. I think, like you said, I think it's pretty much a sign that we're not going to see him again next year with the Timbers as they continue their forever search for a right back. And I'm still curious about using the guys on the roster that they already have. I'm a little bit torn. I didn't particularly mind Jack Jewsbury at right back. It's not a long-term solution by any means, but it worked out all right. And, then you kind of have two ends of the spectrum. Then you've got Ryan Kowalik at the other end who, we've seen their little bits and pieces and everything we've seen has been okay. It just seems like they don't really want to go with either of those guys because they're not perfect. They're still searching for this perfect right back, but I like a couple of the names they've already got and wouldn't mind if they started next season and said, hey, we're going with Jack Jewsbury right now. There are worse things that I could hear. And if they said, hey, we're going to give Kowalik a chance. We're going to give him the spot and see what he can do. I wouldn't mind hearing that either.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the general notion that we've kind of talked around, and kind of mentioned it last week too. The idea that the team is not going to be completely overhauled, and they're going to have to use some of the guys who are currently on the roster, even if that's not the ideal for the long term. Especially in 2013. I think it's probably fair to say that by 2014, the Portland Timbers are going to look very different from the roster that they just ended the 2012 season with. But I don't think that on opening day 2013, it's going to look that different. It may be some different guys in the lineup. It may be a different formation, whatever. But, it would not surprise me at all to see Jack Jewsbury at right back at the first game of the season next year. Because we know he's coming back. And I just don't think he's going to be on the bench. Why bring him back on the money he's making and sit him on the bench?
Yeah.
He's a solid enough contributor. If you can move him around, he's an option. It's sort of like we talked about with guys like Wallace or Palmer. I'm not saying that, those guys have to be in the team, but they give you an option. They can play more than one position, and they give you sort of substitution options, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. We'll have to kind of see and watch how that goes. I'm a little bit frustrated, to be honest, about the training for the Timbers. So it's only been a week, obviously, and I'm not even sure they were practicing all of last week. I believe they did some, but they're back at training this week. And last year we got access to this a little bit, not a lot, and they didn't practice every day, and it wasn't sort of like the regular season style of sort of regulated. We practice these days between this time. It was a little looser, a little less formal. But media could go out there and ask a couple of questions and what'd you think, and get some reflection from the coaches and the players. This time last year, Eddie Johnson was back out there with his his kind of headgear on and all that. There were some things you could kind of learn, and at the very least, just for some kind of closure on the season, with some quotes from different guys and stuff. And I don't know. Maybe I got dropped off the email list, but they, it hadn't been open. It hasn't been open at all, and I just don't. I don't really get that, to be honest. I don't know what's hiding behind the curtain that we can't see. Guys are bringing it on trial. We know they're going to do that if they haven't already brought in more guys, and that's fine. But I don't know why that would be such a big secret that nobody could know. Especially at this point when other teams are supposedly focused on the playoffs and doing other things. To me, it's just really, really bizarre, and it's left a little bit of a void because, we could go out there and we could ask, what was with Kimura? So was his, is he gone? Is he just, trying somewhere else just to see what it's like? Was he invited and he felt like he couldn't pass it up? I mean, we're not going to get any of that information because there's not an opportunity to ask. And that to me is really disappointing in a season where, or at a point in the season or after the season, I guess, where they should be doing nothing but being open and honest. I mean, there's absolutely nothing to be lost from that, and there's nothing to be gained by being secretive at this point. I mean, what are they hiding? I just don't get it. I mean, this is supposed to be an open book on some level. It's supposed to be transitioning, but Porter's not here yet. So, like I don't know. To me, that's very frustrating.
Well, and it's also, I guess, a little bit odd. I mean, we know that some of the guys are not there. I mean, we know that Stephen Smith is back in Scotland. That, so which guys did they require to stay and continue training, and which guys did they send off and say, well, you can go? In which case, it sort of begs the next question: well, why did those guys get to go? Is that guy just getting to go because he's coming back, or is that guy gone because you let him go? And it's like you said, I mean, we could actually get some information and clear up some of the stuff. Like Kimura, does his contract still go through next year, and he's just been invited to go trial with a team or two? So the Timbers have said, okay, sure, you can go, work out with these clubs. Or is it that his contract's up and it's done and it's over and they've sent him on his way? I mean, we don't really know some of those specifics. And I just like going out and watching training.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a soccer training kind of junkie. I just want to see that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I just saw that our friend Daniel Robertson, who we've had on, actually, I think he was on the Lost episode. So sorry. He is just saying that Dallas just announced that they've declined the option on a couple of guys for players. So I mean, it's getting to be that time of year. I mean, guys, need to know. Players need to know. I mean, and you see Kimura go off. That's what other guys should be doing. If they get the opportunity. I mean, transfer window opens in January. Guys, if they're going to move, they're going to want to go get some time in, get fit, stay fit, whatever the deal is. So yeah, it would just be nice to know. I mean, I don't want to just sound like we're just whining about not getting to go to practice or anything, but I'm just kind of surprised because there is a lot of sort of everything about this offseason is about who stays, who goes, why, or at the very least conjecture as to why, which that's sort of our forte. And that's the only question that anybody should have is who, and it doesn't matter for stay or go. It's who. I mean, who's here, who's there, who's wherever. That it also, and just to kind of sort of continue what you were saying about, Smith, we know Palmer's, out here, Boyd's not here. A lot of the guys a lot of the sort of quote unquote senior players have left. And I can't remember if it was Gavin or Sean McCauley that mentioned that the younger players were going to be sticking around, which is sort of a larger scale extension of their additional practice sessions in the afternoons every day. Once McCauley arrived, those guys would stick around and have more work, personal attention than in sort of the standard regular training session. So I mean, I think that's a good thing, but I think what it also speaks to is that the Timbers develop these younger guys. They're trying to give them some attention. Surely they're trying to decide, okay, some of these guys we're going to keep, and some of them we're not going to keep. You got to open up, and to whatever degree they're going to have spots open. They're trying to figure out as much information as possible before Porter arrives as to where they're going to have those spaces. I think that the sort of bigger thing is guys like Smith, or I don't know if Dewsbury's here or not, but guys like that who are sort of, they're not old, but they're established professionals. You know, this is sort of the idea that, you know, kind of, for some reason this popped in my head, and it was something that John Spencer said. Bringing guys in on trial and signing new international players, and you know, why aren't the Timbers doing more of that, and why aren't they more active in the transfer window and all this kind of stuff? And he basically said, look, you can't just bring guys in who are the same level as what you've got. You know, I mean, you can bring them in all you want, but you can't keep them. You can't sign them. There's no benefit to that. You need, if you're going to make a change, someone's got to be better than what you have. And, you know, I think that's on some level, it's kind of like, yeah, obviously that's, you know, why would you sign somebody if they're worse than what you already have? But I think that kind of speaks to this more general idea that the Timbers are in the process of evaluating guys during the second half of the year, trying to establish kind of a core of the team, trying to find guys who are going to sort of, you know, people are going to go, you know, 3 or 4 years from now, oh yeah, those are original Timbers. You know, those are original MLS Timbers for a while. And you give guys a chance to play together. Give them a chance to spend, you know, come back through the offseason. They come back. They know, you know, their buddies. They know the guys they play with. They sometimes they actually live with each other. I mean, this the most difficult thing about an expansion team is developing a core of the team that actually, you know, you're always going to have some turnover every offseason. But the teams that are successful are the ones that have not all 11 starters exactly the same for 10 years, but they've got like 4, 5, 6 the same for 3, 4, 5 years. And once you get to that point, I mean, we can look at Salt Lake as an example. You can look other places too. You know, you can depend on those guys, you can rely on those guys, and then you can pick and choose the other pieces that you can add because you know what you've got. And what the Timbers haven't done a great job of to this point is kind of sticking with one group of guys. I mean, there's a few guys who have sort of been, you know, untouchable, for lack of a better word. I mean, Dewsbury sort of being the chief. I mean, when Dewsbury's, and sometimes that's been frustrating to people when he hasn't been playing well, but that from sort of from a sort of zoomed out view is something that you need. What they do, and even if they're not the best possible player in the league at that position, they're your player at that position, and you can strengthen, you know, other things around it or do other things to support the strengths and weaknesses. So I think, you know, as we kind of look back on this season in time, it's hard to do it from here, I think, but I think in time we'll kind of see, okay, these are the guys that, you know, we can sort of tell they wanted to stick with these guys. They wanted to play them. I mean, because that was sort of a criticism too, is that, you know, people are hearing, oh, we're evaluating and we're trying guys in different spots, and then they see,
I think we may have
like, well, that's,
oh, there we go. You
say what?
We completely lost you there for a couple seconds.
Oh, sorry. Well, my point is just to reinforce the idea that Timbers are going for this core of the team, I think, and I think in time see that a little bit more clearly than we can, right?
Yeah, because, you know, getting that core of the team is going to take some time. It takes some time for anybody, for any team, you know, to be able to do. If you're if you're an expansion team, or if you're a team that's going through some type of rebuilding process, yeah, you got to identify those guys. And then when sort of in the middle of it, or as you're getting started, you switch and you go to a new coach who wants to do things a little bit differently. Well, maybe his idea of which players that's going to be is going to be changed a little bit and adjusted. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of room for change in there, and you've got to identify those core pieces that are going to stay, that are going to be your foundation for years to come. And I think some of those guys are here, but it's going to be tweaked a little bit with a new coach, and it's going to take some time. They can't just do it all in one season. you can never do anything like all in one season. You can't go and get all the players and all the pieces you want just in one off-season stint. Hey, I've got 3 months. We're going to fix everything. I mean, you just can't do it. Even if the roster rules would allow it, the players that you ideally want aren't going to be available. Teams aren't going to trade with you, or overseas players aren't going to be available when you want them to be. It's going to take a little bit of time. So, like you, I mean, I'm curious to sort of see moving forward if some of those pillars, some of those foundation players are the same with Caleb Porter. Does he see Diego Chara as one of those pieces? Because clearly he sort of was in the previous regime. We would assume that he would be moving forward, but you never know. Is Porter still going to want to do Chara, Mascara? We would assume Nagby, but who else up there? Which of those guys is going to be that foundation that you're going to build everything around? It'll be interesting to see. The goalkeeper question is another one. I mean, you'd like to have a foundation type piece at goalkeeper, but we seem to be in the midst of handing the reins over, sort of bringing along a younger guy. So that's going to take time to happen as well. I mean, it's a season of change. It's going to be a couple seasons of change. It's not going to be any easy answers going forward. It's not going to be quick. But it is interesting, because we get to see guys come and go a little bit, and we get to see the evaluation process. So, I mean, it's interesting. It's certainly not, going to bring a whole bunch of wins and an MLS championship anytime soon, likely. But it is, good fodder for conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. The Timbers did actually release some news this week or last week, announced some preseason games. So now we actually have a bit of a calendar with which to work. And we know that players are going to report in sort of mid to late January, which is pretty similar to the last couple of years. And then they're going to go down to Arizona, down to Tucson, and they're not playing in the tournament, the Desert Diamond Cup or whatever it's called. But they are going to be down in Tucson for, it looks like, a week and a half, basically. They'll have 4 games down there: Colorado, Sporting Kansas City, Seattle, and then the local team, FC Tucson. And that's all down in Arizona. And then they'll be coming back for another tournament here, which is going to be similar to what they did last year, where AIK was here, plus San Jose and Chivas. I expect, so Merritt Paulson indicated that there would be 2 MLS teams and 1 international team. And I would be willing to bet that neither Chivas nor San Jose are those teams. I would also be willing to bet Seattle is not one of them either. So I don't know if they're going to stick with, sort of geographically, easier to get to West Coast. You don't have to change time zones. Kind of a deal, or if it's just sort of open and they're willing to have anybody come in. Obviously, playing with the way the schedule is, playing against teams in the Western Conference gives you a little bit of a benefit, or potentially gives you a benefit, I guess. I mean, the Timbers drew against Chivas in the preseason and then lost all 3 games. The Timbers also defeated lose to San Jose in the regular season, despite them being the best team. So, I mean, was that because they got an extra early look at them? I don't know that necessarily, but it has the potential for, being helpful. So it's a full preseason, and I'm sure we'll get 1 or 2 other random things that pop in there as well. But I personally am happy because I'm going to be able to go down to Arizona for some of those games, which will be interesting to see kind of that preseason deal, because it's a little different than how the tournament works out. And basically the Timbers have been in LA the last 2 years, and it's been pretty spotty with coverage. It's not been spotty, but in sort of only one outlet really. So let's actually, we've had a couple of questions. One with a pretty funny use of word choice. Let's start with that one. If you had to pick only two positions where the Timbers could upgrade, where would that be? What do you think?
That's tough. I think I would find it probably hard to believe that anybody would make an attempt to answer this question and not include right back somewhere in the answer. So I'm going to say right back as one of those. But another one is tough because I don't know what Porter is going to do, what he's going to tweak, what he's going to change, and how his influence is going to impact some of the players already on the roster. So it's a little tough. I guess I want to see these guys play. I wouldn't mind seeing a lot of these same guys play together under a new coach in a new sort of system before completely answering that question. Because who's to say that, Mwanga couldn't start shining, as a forward, or that Nagbe with some tweaks couldn't be that number 10 or attacking center midfielder that sort of everybody's wanted to see from him. I don't know if he may or may not be that player given, some new direction. So I'm not quite sure, but I think the easiest answer is probably right back. But other than that, I don't know. I kind of have a bit of faith in some of the talent that's here, and I guess I'd just like to wait to see if it blossoms under a new head coach before really answering, I guess, the second half of that question. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, right back is for sure on the list. And I would include left back on the list. And probably center back on the list. I don't know if that's a theme or what, but you're right. We haven't necessarily seen guys in their best positions, or maybe we haven't, but we're not, because it's kind of been talked about as if people are being tested in places where they shouldn't be. But there are some guys we know have been playing out of position, or at least out of their best position. So yeah, I'd like to see some of that. Like you said, we could see some answers. An easy, I don't know, not a fix, certainly not a long-term fix. Would be, drop Dewsbury in right back and bring Alexander in the central midfield and see what happens. That could be a big upgrade. It might not be a big upgrade at all. I don't know. We're gonna have to kind of see that. But yeah, I think more than anything across the back line is where the Timbers need the most improvement, upgrade, overall skill. I think the players in those positions, for the most part, are fine, but I think for the most part are sort of squad players, not necessarily starters or guys that in an ideal team that's competing for an MLS Cup or whatever. And I completely am aware that that's not what they're going to be trying to do next year. But they could use upgrades across the back line if possible. Up front. So our other question, and we'll kind of use this as a way to talk about that, says maybe we could address the striker position. It's looking a bit crowded and confusing. Yeah, it is definitely crowded, and without sounding too lame, we're going to have to see what Porter really wants. The guy I think is the easy odd man out is Facito. I could see him on the roster next year, but I don't see him playing any he played this year. There's too much other, stuff there to use, and that hasn't been taken advantage of to this point. And if it's me, I'm trying to get the best out of Mwanga. I'm trying to get the best out of DK, and I'm trying to see if Rincon and Valencia, in particular, are there yet. Can they actually be functional parts of the team, or do they need to kind of stay in the reserves and keep kind of pounding away that way? The bigger question, obviously, Kris Boyd. Is he coming back? If he is, To me, that's neither good nor bad, but it just means you are not going to have as many options. You're not going to be able to try as many things. I think he can be better than he was. I think he may not be the best person for what we think is the kind of style that Caleb Porter wants to play. Or maybe he would be great at it. I mean, maybe, though he's not fast, maybe he can hold the ball up in a way that actually allows everyone else to buzz around all over the place around him, and actually kind of work in sort of a hybrid of and doing at the collegiate level. I mean, there are lots of options. I don't know that there's any way to say for sure. I mean, I would have said, in fact, I did say earlier in the year that there was no way DK was going to be involved. So obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about, but he's kind of taken advantage of that opportunity and given himself a chance to be part of the conversation. And so, what we don't yet know is whether or not Mwanga is capable of doing the same thing. If one of those young guys that I mentioned is capable of doing the same thing, if the Timbers are going to try and bring someone else in, particularly if Boyd actually doesn't come back, they're going to have to sort of shuffle the deck a little bit. I suppose Nagbe is still always a possible option to play as a forward, or certainly as a supporting forward. So yeah, I mean that's one area where, unlike the back line, to me, the forward line, you've got the potential of talent and work rate and options, more so than I think across the back line. But the fact remains, basically the Timbers didn't score this year. So, I mean, they've got to do more than what they did. But because there are so many guys, I don't think we're going to see a lot of activity unless Boyd leaves, because they've got a lot of money wrapped up in forward position. I mean, a lot of money, like basically half their salary cap is, wrapped up in players, at that position, 2 designated players. Once Valencia comes back on the books next year, and Mwanga's, on a huge contract, and so I don't see a lot of movement there unless they blow it all up, and I don't really see that happening there.
Yeah, and another name, I think the one that you didn't mention was Richards.
Oh, Richards. Yeah.
I mean, Richards is technically a forward. They've only played him at outside mid, but I mean that's what he's grown up playing. So he's still an option there as well. And I think you phrased it right. Sort of the idea of what we presume Porter's system will be. Boyd might actually in some ways be a better fit. We all know that DK simply is not the greatest with skill and touch. I mean, we know that. Boyd, as I've pointed out a couple of times over the year, he's actually really good at laying the ball off. It's showing back to the ball, getting a ball in, whether it's to his feet on the ground or whether it's a big booming ball from the back. He's really adept at taking one touch and laying it off to somebody behind him. And who knows, maybe he could fit somehow in Porter's system in a way that seems a bit more improbable that DK could, considering that if Porter brings a system that we sort of presume he will, that's going to require some guys to take a lot of touches and make a lot of passes, that may not be the best fit in the world for Bright DK. I mean, the guy can hammer a ball. We all know that. And he can, he's a bull in a china shop and he's physical. But if you bring him back 30 and 40 yards away from goal and ask him to get a whole bunch of touches on the ball, the odds are that he's just going to give up possession and lose possession for you. I don't think Boyd is going to do it as much. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, you never really know until you bring a new coach in with a new system and actually get him out there with his players and let him implement stuff and give him a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to see a couple players and get them playing the way he wants to see who's going to be successful. But along that forward line, and we've been saying this for ever since we started doing this show, which, by the way, is about a year ago today. They've got a plethora of forwards. They've got a ton of options. And again, I think we said this at this time last year. We wouldn't be surprised if they dumped a couple of them and reused those roster spots and money to bring in perhaps some more defenders, some more outside backs, because they've got a truckload of guys who can potentially play forward. So I don't know. And I mean, I hope we don't get into a situation where we look back and say, boy, we really wanted those guys to do well, and they never did. But there's just a lot of names on that list that you feel could result in that. Boyd, DK, Mwanga, even Nagby now is sort of like that same thing. Like, boy, we all had really hopes. We all wanted him to do really well. It's just, I mean, every day it's just like, is he really going to come around the way we want him to? Will Richards step up and be that homegrown player? I mean, we really don't know. It's like we've got a lot of these guys that just like we really want to do well, but only time is gonna tell if they're really gonna come through. But boy, they do have a lot of options.
They do, and I think the stuff you said about Boyd is particularly interesting. Just given again this idea that we kind of what's coming, and it may just be that he makes so much money that the Timbers are not willing to pay that much or to pay the majority of his contract for him to be somewhere else. They have to be, I mean, and as a fan of the Timbers, I'm hoping this is true, they have to be operating on a 2 or 3 or 4 year plan with they obviously, like we've been talking about this entire hour, they're obviously not doing everything at once. There is not going to be a group of 3 guys that stay and everyone else is gone. That isn't going to happen. So, if you're trying to figure things out, yes, Boyd makes a ton of money. Only part of it counts against the salary cap. So that's one thing. But it may just be that, look, we signed him to a 2-year deal. He wants to fulfill the 2-year deal. He feels like he can do better and will do better. We'll give him a fresh start with a new coach, 10 more years. We just want him to fulfill the contract, and it would cost so much to do anything else, either to just get rid of him or, whatever you're going to, it's not going to be any better than 50 cents on the dollar. So, because his stock is so low at the moment that people aren't going to give you anything for him that makes it worth, what you're going to end up still paying anyway. So I don't know if I'm talking myself into Kris Boyd, Kris Boyd for sure being back here, and I'm not necessarily anyone else into that. I just think that the more you kind of look at it, the more it sort of seems like, well, I mean, if they're looking at next year the way they, in my opinion, should, next year, if it's as good as this year, wouldn't be that bad. So, just given the inevitable and difference that these changes are going to make and require, you got a guy here already. He does actually have the potential to score a lot of goals. Just because he didn't doesn't mean he can't. And I'm not saying he will, but I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I kind of see, yeah, well, maybe they'll try and make it work and see how it goes. And, if it doesn't really work through a quarter of the season, a third of the season, what do you have to lose at that point? Who cares? His contract's going to be up. You owe him nothing. I mean, yeah, you'll not get anything for him when he leaves either, but, I don't think the Timbers are trying to parlay big payday, sell him off to, somewhere and make twice as much money as they paid for him. I mean, I just don't think that's part of the plan. I don't think it's part of the plan. And maybe it is. I don't know. But, he's not in the same boat as Valencia, who I think the Timbers very much hope to turn into several $1 million. I think Kris Boyd is totally different. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, this is going to be, I kind of said it earlier, this is going to be a really interesting year when we're further removed from it, because I already feel like I understand a little bit more what happened in 2011 just by having, a year and a half space in between the things that actually happened, and to kind of see how they played out a little bit, make a little more sense out of some of the decisions that were made, why they were made, and sort of how they impacted things over a longer period of time than this happened yesterday. We better talk about it now, as if we know all the answers about how it's going to turn out. I think there's some lessons to be learned from this season that are a little bit wider reaching, and I really do think once we get Porter in here, or not once he gets here, because they're not going to start camp until a month after it's here, but once camp starts, I think we'll see. Oh, okay, this is the influence that he had during the season. I mean, it's kind of rumored, he had all, secret Caleb Porter behind the, curtain and, doing this sort of Wizard of Oz deal. And completely true or maybe completely untrue, or somewhere in the middle. I think we'll start to see that emerge a little bit more. And that's kind of what's exciting, is kind of taking this frustrating season results-wise and hopefully finding something positive to say about what happened, and not only go, wow, that season really sucked.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we didn't quite we sort of wanted to do a bit of a season review. We didn't quite get into season review mode, but I think you and I are both going to do sort of like a top 10 like events from the year sort of thing. So maybe we can try to put that together in the next week and sort of use that as our impetus to do sort of more of a season recap, how things went during the course of the year, perhaps next Tuesday. Couple things going on, though. Obviously, we've got Fantasy League and we've got the MLS playoffs. So let's take a quick second here real quickly and get your thoughts on the playoffs so far. Who do you like moving ahead now that we've seen, the first leg of these matchups?
Ooh, I mean, I was pretty surprised to see Houston beat Kansas City 2-0. I mean, it was in Houston, so that it's not surprising they would play. But that's a tough way back. I mean, I know away goals don't count, so not having scored on the road isn't going to hurt them. But Kansas City, but they're going to have to win 3-0 to definitely go. Or at least 2-0 just to get back to the point at which they'll go to extra time. So that's really tough. Yes, they're good at home, but that was surprising to me and really disappointing to me. I mean, nothing against Houston or anything, but I really like watching Kansas City, and I would like to see them continue. They got in the semifinals, so that would be disappointing to me on a personal level, but that surprised me to see Houston come out. Otherwise, I mean, San Jose doing it the same way. What can you even say about that? I mean, winning away definitely gives them a leg up to get to the Western Conference Final. Interestingly, though, Don Garber came out and said that the final, if San Jose is the host, which basically means, I mean, there's nobody in the Eastern host if San Jose comes out of the West. So. Anyway, basically said that it will not be at Buckshaw Stadium. It'll be somewhere else. They don't know yet where. So whether that's Stanford Stadium or somewhere else, they're not going to limit it to 10,000, right. 10,000 people for the MLS Cup. Even though I think that's only how many showed up in Toronto a couple years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's obviously just, but it's a little bit nice on some level to kind of take a step back and just sort of watch from a completely neutral perspective. Mostly neutral perspective, and just kind of see things play out, and the two legs are always interesting. How they and everything. But I don't know. What about you? What are you seeing so far?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like everybody else, shocked in the Houston result in that it was 2-0. I mean, I don't think I would have been all that surprised if they had at home held Kansas City scoreless, in Houston, but I'm surprised that they were able to get that sort of a win. And I mean, that really puts Kansas City on the back leg, and there's a lot of people who had them picked, to get to the cup and win it all. I thought LA looked really good except for the fact that they just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. I thought they looked much better than San Jose, but like you said, San Jose, I don't know that they've ever in any game really looked like an awesome team. They just have this way of getting goals at some point, and some of them have been really nice goals, but a lot of them have been just run-of-the-mill, down and dirty, working hard type goals. So I was, on some level, I was a little disappointed with that result, just because I think as I usually watch a game from sort of as a third party, as an unbiased perspective, I'm usually sort of end up rooting for whichever team I think is just playing better. I sort of like the results to end up matching the way the game actually went on the field. So that one I was a little disappointed in. And I actually didn't get to watch Seattle and Salt Lake. And I had recorded it. I was ready to go and rewatch it. And then I saw the score was 0-0. So I thought, forget it. But I am looking forward very much to all of the second legs, which I think 3 of them are tomorrow night. Right. And I don't know. I can look real quick. Let's see where New York, D.C., that's on NBC Sports Network. Kansas City, Houston doesn't look like it's on TV. Just says MLS Live. But then San Jose and L.A. is on ESPN2. So you should be able to get 2 of those 3 games. And then on Thursday night is Seattle RSL. That is on NBC Sports Network as well. So I think those, I mean, most of them should be pretty entertaining. I mean, at least there are reasons for them to be entertaining. So, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to them. Should be a good round. And, of course, we still got fantasy going on. So you only get 1 transfer before the games start tomorrow based on what you had prior to the previous round, but go make your 1 transfer. Currently, I'm making things interesting as you continue to fall, or not continue to fall. I think it was that week where that round where you forgot to choose and make any transfers. You fell to 27th and you remain there. And you pulled the Trevor basically, and I'm up at 29th, and Trevor has had some decent players when he stopped updating his fantasy roster. So he remains in 44th and actually didn't score that badly because he had quite a few guys from Kansas City and San Jose and LA and whatnot. So, but he's going to be forced to update it, though, at some point as these teams get knocked out. So we'll see. So make sure and do that. Keep up with the old fantasy league and keep tabs on that. That's still fun and interesting and kind of keeps you involved with the playoffs as well.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to be just going on Tuesdays from the rest of the offseason, or I mean, unless something comes up, for the most part, we're going to be Tuesdays, 10 a.m. here on North American Soccer Network and live on NASNradio.com, just as we have been today. Hopefully my audio will be a little better in future episodes than this, for everyone's sake, including mine. But yeah, so join us again next Tuesday. We'll be back. We will actually spend some time coming up with the season review and talk about what happened with the Timbers. But yeah, and join us again Tuesday morning. Until then, this is Mao.
And this is Kelly. We'll see you next week.
We will speak to you then.